Do we have questions about page 63? No? Okay, page 64. Do we have questions about page 64? Also no? Okay, that's it. So that was fast. Today we're doing three things: adjectives, adverbs, and numbers. Adjectives, first of all, the difference between adjectives and adverbs. Usually people will say adjectives describe nouns, adverbs describe everything else. And that's basically correct, with one small difference, which is adverbs don't just describe everything else. Adverbs are everything that is not anything else. So we have nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions, conjunctions, articles, everything else. And if it does not fit into one of those categories, we call it an adverb. So if you look up, if you have a word and you're not sure what part of speech it is, and you look it up in the dictionary, sometimes it will say adverb, and you might scratch your head thinking, why? It doesn't describe anything. The answer is because if it's not anything else, it's an adverb. So let's start with adjectives. Adjectives describe nouns. Most adjectives come in front of the noun that it describes. Very few adjectives come after the noun. They are either fixed expressions, so you can memorize them like a vocabulary word, or they come from another language, like they're from French or from Latin. And for those, you can also memorize them like they're a regular word. The third kind of adjective that comes after the noun is a form of relative clause. And we will talk about these more next semester, but I'm just going to give you an example now, just so you know what we're talking about. That's a really bad example. The Okay, so in the more expected order, we would see the drunk person. Sometimes you might see the person drunk, and we can understand this as the person that was drunk, or who was drunk. Therefore, I said that this is a kind of relative clause. We can kind of ignore this until next semester. Next semester, we will talk about this kind of sentence. But if you see something like this, this is why. Okay, so for adjectives that come before the noun, if you have multiple adjectives, there is a fixed order. Now, this is the interesting part. If you talk to a native speaker and you ask them, hey, what if you give the native speaker like 5 adjectives to put in front of a noun, and you ask them to put them in the correct order, they can do it. But if you ask them, why is this the correct order? They don't know. They'll just tell you, it just feels right. If you put them in a different order, it feels wrong. But there is a logic, and here is the logic. The closer to the noun the adjective is, the more objective it is, the more it is related to the existence of that noun. The further away the adjective is, the more subjective it is, the more it is related to the person talking about the noun. You can think of this as, well, the best way to do this is to give you an example. My first big green rubber ball. This is the textbook, by the way. We're on page 131. My first big green rubber ball. Rubber is the material of the ball. It is closer to objective. If I look at the ball, if you look at the ball, we can both agree it's a rubber ball. Green. Here is where we might have some disagreement. Maybe I think it's green, maybe you think it's blue, but we can all agree it's not red. So it's slightly less objective. Big, there's more room for disagreement. I might think it's big, you might think it's small. First is, of course, very much related to the person talking. It's my first ball, but it's not your first ball. And then finally, my. This is the most subjective part. So the order is from subjective to objective. Let's look at this one. A magnificent old American Ford automobile. An automobile is a car. So the car is made by Ford. Everyone who looks at the car can agree. It is an American car. This is slightly more subjective because Ford has factories around the world. Maybe this particular Ford was not made in America. We cannot be 100% sure. It is an old car. Here we might disagree. You might think it's old, I might think it's quite new. And then finally, magnificent. This is a subjective description. Now, as you can see, you don't have to fill every category. This is just to tell you, if you have more than one adjective, how do you put them in order? Let's look at one more, this one. A memorable French skiing trip. What kind of trip was it? It's a trip where we went skiing. Everyone who goes on the trip will agree. Even if you personally did not go skiing, you know that other people did go skiing, so it was a skiing trip. French. Does this mean that we went to France? Does this mean that it was a group of French people? There's a little more room for disagreement. Or maybe the travel agency was French. Maybe you went to Switzerland, but to the French-speaking part of Switzerland, right? There's more room for disagreement. And then finally, memorable. Maybe it was memorable for me, but you have already forgotten the trip. Okay, questions so far? So there is I mentioned at the beginning of the semester that grammar determines your meaning. Or I should say grammar determines what kind of world you're living in. So you can mix up this order, but then you would be describing something different. If you say my first big rubber green ball, if you put rubber before green, then you're saying that there is a kind of ball called a green ball, and that this category of ball is something that everybody agrees on. You might even write it with a capital G, green ball. And some so-called green balls are made of rubber. Some of them are made of metal. Some of them are made of wood. But all of them, we can agree, are a kind of ball called a green ball. So if you mix this order, you're not just making a mistake, you're creating a whole new category of object or of noun. Another example, if you flip French and skiing, if you say it's a memorable skiing French trip, then you're telling me that the main purpose of the trip was to learn French. And it just so happened that on this language trip, you guys went skiing. You could do other things to learn French. You can go visit museums. You can go watch a French play. And those would all be French trips, a category of trip. But here in the original sentence, it's a skiing trip. So the purpose of the trip was to go skiing. Maybe you can go to France. Maybe you can go to Italy. Maybe you can go to Argentina. But the category of trip is skiing. Right? So this is how word order and grammar can give you different meanings and different understandings of the situation. My favorite example of this is Donald Trump earlier this year helped promote and pass a piece of legislation that he called the One Big Beautiful Bill. I believe the Chinese in Chinese our news translated this as 大而美法案. Do you see anything weird about this adjective order? Beautiful should be more subjective than big, right? We can agree whether something is big or not, but we can more disagree whether it's beautiful or not. So when Trump calls his bill the One Big Beautiful Bill, he's saying that everyone agrees it is beautiful, even if you don't agree that it's big. It's a bit of political manipulation of words. By calling it a big, beautiful bill, he's kind of brainwashing us into agreeing, yes, it is a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. So word order affects your meaning. Questions so far? Okay. What if you have two adjectives of the same category? See if we can come up with well, okay, so here it says dangerous and useless. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it is replace the and with a comma. So you can say a dangerous and useless chemical experiment. You can say a dangerous, comma, useless chemical experiment. That also works. So sometimes when you read, you will see people like use several adjectives and there is a comma between some of them, but no comma between others. And this is why. You only need a comma between adjectives of the same category. Yeah, again, I'm really bad at coming up with examples, but that is what's happening if you see a comma in a list of adjectives. Okay, the other main thing about adjectives that we want to talk about is you can use nouns as adjectives. These are called nominal adjectives, or sorry, adjectival nouns. So this is actually very common. A pencil case. It looks like you have two nouns, pencil and case, but you're actually only talking about a case. The pencil is describing the case. So in this example, the word pencil is now a noun. A kitchen table. Again, kitchen and table are both nouns, but in this case, there is only a table. You're using the noun kitchen to describe the word table, so kitchen has become an adjective. And there are many such cases. In fact, there is no limit on the length of nouns that you add together. So we can come up with an arbitrary series of nouns. Let's see. Keyboard, desk, support, manufacture, company, president, gathering. All of these are nouns. Keyboard's a noun, desk is a noun, support is a noun. In this case, it's a noun, etc. But we're only talking about a gathering. All of the rest of these nouns are being used as adjectives. What kind of gathering is it? It's a gathering of presidents. What kind of presidents? Company presidents. What kind of companies? Manufacture companies. What do they manufacture? They manufacture supports, 支架. Supports for what? Supports for desks. What kind of desks? Desks where you put keyboards. Right? So each word is describing the next word until we get to the noun. I believe I mentioned in the first week that you can, English is very fluid between nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So the word gathering in this case is a noun. But of course, you can tell from the word itself, the original meaning is a verb. And you can also use it as an adjective as well. Now we're not talking about a gathering. Now we're talking about an announcement for the gathering. So now gathering is an adjective. Same word, 3 uses. 一餐三吃. Now, there's also a note about pronunciation here. If you have 2 nouns and they combine to become an adjective plus a noun, the pronunciation changes. For example, if it's a regular adjective, right, a big keyboard, the stress is on key, a big keyboard. But if you have 2 nouns together, the stress is always on the first syllable. Not for like in the first word. Piano, it's a piano keyboard, not a piano keyboard, a piano keyboard. The stress is always in the first word. So this is not a pencil case. It is a pencil case. If you're talking about a table that belongs to the kitchen, you're talking about a kitchen table. For this long series, the stress is in the word president here. It's a keyboard desk supporting manufacturer company president gathering. And there's a difference. If you use the wrong pronunciation, you're actually talking about 2 different things. So, for example, a kitchen table is a table made for the kitchen. But if you're talking about a kitchen table, you're talking about whatever table is located in the kitchen. If you pronounce it like a regular adjective plus a noun, you're describing in this case, the location of the table. But the table itself is not changed. It's just any random table. But if you pronounce it together as a compound, a kitchen table, you are now changing what kind of table it is. It is a table made for the kitchen. So a piano keyboard, you're describing like a keyboard with some piano pictures on it, or a keyboard that's put on top of the piano. But if you change, if you pronounce it as piano keyboard, then you are changing the meaning of the word keyboard. It is not just a regular keyboard, it is a keyboard where you can play the piano. So far, so good? Questions? I did say today would be a speaking class. Okay, so those are nouns. Questions, sorry, adjectives. Those are adjectives. Questions about adjectives? Okay, if not, let's move on to adverbs. As I said, anything that doesn't fit into anything else is an adverb, but we can talk about two main kinds of adverbs. The first kind is a word that describes an adjective or verb or adverb. So he moved quickly through the room. We know that the word quickly is describing moved, not he, because adverbs do not describe nouns. You can put this adverb in front of the verb or behind the verb. Both are fine. So he moved quickly through the room, or he quickly moved through the room. The meaning is slightly different. Do you want to emphasize the fact that he was moving? Or do you want to emphasize the fact that it was fast? Imagine the scene, right? There's some dude, and then he is moving quickly through the room. What do you notice first? The fact that he's moving or the fact that he's fast? That's the difference between these two. If you put quickly first, then you're pointing out that he's fast. What is he doing fast? He's moving fast. But if you put moved first, then you're first pointing out that he's moving, and then you're pointing out that he's fast. There's a slight difference. And for this kind of sentence, you can also put the adverb in other places in certain situations. So you can say, quickly he moved through the room. This is less common, but it still makes sense. I want to point out a key detail here. There is no comma. This will become important later, but in this sentence, there is no comma. Or you can say he moved through the room quickly, and that also makes sense. But these two are slightly less common. Maybe movement is not a good example to emphasize the difference in position. Give me another verb. Somebody give me a verb. No, like not related to movement. So not moving, running, walking, jumping, something else. Okay, eating. Okay, so the base sentence is she ate her lunch. And then we can add the adverb in different places. Quickly, she ate her lunch. She quickly ate her lunch. And she ate her lunch quickly. So in this case, because the verb is transitive, it has to take an object. You would put the adverb after the object. This cannot be separated. Okay, so if you say quickly she ate her lunch, then you are really emphasizing that she's moving fast. And then you later tell the reader what exactly she's doing. If you say she quickly ate her lunch, she's moving slightly slower. you're first able to say who she is, and then you say she's doing something quickly, and then you point out she's eating. In the last example, it feels the slowest. She ate her lunch quickly. First, you have the person, then you have her eating lunch, and then finally you add, oh, by the way, she's doing it very fast. So the basic meaning of these three sentences is the same, but they feel different depending on where you put that adverb. Okay, the second kind of adverb that I want to talk about today is called the sentence adverb. You are using this adverb to describe the entire sentence. Fortunately, I had already finished the job. So in this case, fortunately is not describing finished. It's not describing already. Fortunately is describing the whole sentence. This entire situation is fortunate. For this kind of adverb, you do need to add the comma. Right? So quickly she ate her lunch. You're describing her eating, no comma. Fortunately, describing the whole sentence, comma. In terms of grammar, this is the only difference between these two kinds of adjectives. Whether you add the comma or not, it changes the meaning of the sentence. So, for example, if we put a comma after quickly, we're creating a completely different kind of situation. Let me show you. Quickly, she ate her lunch. We must get there before she leaves the table. Right? So now the word quickly is describing the whole situation. We have to move faster because she ate her lunch. Now it is not describing how she eats because we have a comma. So another example of some bad things that can happen if you don't add the comma. However, you walk home alone. Oh, sorry, that's it. However, you walked home. So in this case, the word however is an adverb describing the whole situation. However means it is unexpected. It is not in line with the previous sentence. Maybe the previous sentence is, I went to school. However, you walked home, right? So these are opposite ideas. If you don't have the comma, it turns into a different meaning. The word however also means in whatever way, in any available way. So however you walked home is no longer a complete sentence. However you walked home, it always took you at least 30 minutes. The word however means in any way. So in any way you walked home, it always took you at least 30 minutes. The difference between this sentence and this part of the sentence is the comma. A comma comes after the adverb. If you don't have the comma, you're using another meaning of the word. Okay, so that's the importance of the comma. Now we can talk about where you can put that sentence adverb. Fortunately, I had already finished the job. That's fine. You can say, I fortunately had already finished the job. You can say, I had, fortunately, already finished the job. You can say, I had, oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so the only place you cannot put this fortunately is somewhere here. The word finish needs an object. You cannot separate the object from the verb. And the word the is attached to the word job. You cannot separate these two. So you can put fortunately after I, after had, after already, or after job. Or before, right? So you can say, fortunately, I'd already finished the job. I fortunately had already finished the job. I had fortunately already finished the job. I had already fortunately finished the job. Or I had already finished the job fortunately. And they all mean the same thing. The difference is not one of meaning, right? Earlier, depending on where we put the quickly, the meaning was slightly different. But wherever you put the fortunately here, the meaning is exactly the same because you're always describing the whole thing. So why are there so many options? Why do people change the position? Because of pacing, 节奏. Some writers really care about where you pause in your sentence. Sometimes to create tension, sometimes to create emphasis. There are many different reasons to want you to pause here or to pause there. But the basic meaning is the same. Okay, that's all I wanted to say about adverbs. Questions? We are going to talk more about this, however, this use of however next semester as well. If you don't have questions, one last thing today is numbers. And for this, we're going to use the handout. That's not the handout. This is the handout. Please go to page. It's a very weird page. 72. I'm sure you know what numbers are. Right? This is not a math class. This is an English class. So we're basically looking at how do we express numbers in English. And the first thing to know is that in English, every number is plural except 1. I mean, obviously 2 is plural, 3 is plural. Half is plural. 0 is plural. 0.3 is plural. Only 1 is singular. So half of the class, no, well, the class is uncountable. Half of the bananas are missing. 0.3 of the, somebody give me a noun, water bottles are on sale. Right? Only 1 is singular. Okay, so this handout includes both American and British English. We're just going to focus on American English. How to talk about numbers. Regular numbers are called cardinal numbers. 1, 3, 5, and 7 are called odd, 奇数. 2, 4, 6, and 8 are called even, 偶数. If you put them in order, first, second, and third, they are ordinal numbers because they are in order, ordinal. If you have a big number with a comma, right? In English, or sorry, when we write numbers, we often add a comma after every 3 numbers. If you have a comma, in American English, we do not add the and. So this number is 5,642. no and. But in British English, they do add the and. So if a Brit tells you it's 5,642, they are not wrong. They are just British. We must forgive them. Okay, so between Chinese and English, the big numbers. English is really cool. Every comma, you change the word. So yeah, we can create our own example here. 5, 50, 500. When you get to 5,000, that's your first comma. And then you go back to original. So 5,000, 50,000, 500,000. When you add your second comma, we changed words. Now it's 5 million, 50 million, 500 million. You add another comma, it changes words into billion, and so on. So every comma, you change words. This is, of course, slightly different from Chinese because Chinese uses 4 digits to change words, right? 1, 然后 yi, 然后 zao. So the easiest way to remember this is to remember what the Chinese is for each comma. So you have to remember that this is 5,000, and this is 500万, and this is 50亿, and then this is 5兆. Right? If you memorize the transition points for each comma, first of all, it helps you with the numbers because now you know how many numbers. But it also helps you with the English because the English follows the commas. So if you just memorize every 3 digits, it's easier to transition, right? So if you have like if you have this kind of number, in English, it's very simple. How many commas? 3 commas. So it's 20,400,000, right? You change words for every comma. In Chinese, you want to memorize that 5 billion is 50亿, and then you go backwards from there, right? 50亿, 2040万, right? Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So if you memorize 3 by 3, it's faster to transition. Okay. Yes, so if you are British, you usually add the and in the place of the last comma before where there is a number. So let's look at this example. This is 234,700,000. After this comma, there are no numbers. It's all zeros. So it makes no sense to add the and here. If you're British, you will add the and here for this comma. So it's 234 million and 700,000. Ignore the handout. That doesn't make sense. But if you're not British, you don't have to know this. Fractions, 分数. For the common fractions, we have names, right? A half, a quart, a third, a quarter. But then after that, you use the ordinal numbers. Fifth, but you add an s because there's more than one. So 4/4, 4/5. You have divided this into 5 sections. Each section is called a fifth. And you have 4 of them. So it's 4/5. This is 2/3. This is 1/8. If you have a whole number, you use and. 1 and 2/3. Same for American English, same for British English. So this is 5.5. So far, so good? Even if you have an over large fraction, so if you have like 6/3, which equals 2, right? 6/6, 2嘛, 6/3, it still follows this rule. How many of them, and then how many total pieces? Next, decimals, 小数. 小数点. Americans don't say not. We say 0 or O. O here. For decimals, it doesn't matter how many numbers. You say them the exact same way. 0 point, that's the dot, and then you just read the numbers. So the first one is 0.125. Second one is 3.7. This one is 2.1368. Very simple. You just read the numbers. Or you might, if there's a 0 at the beginning, you might say 0.1. 0.1, 0.1. This one you might say 4.0098, 4.0098. Okay, next, 0. Remember, 0 is plural. There are 0 pieces of pizza left. Yes, only the British say not. But there are other ways to say 0. Nil, O. The word love is used in tennis. And only tennis. I have no idea why. I learned it previously. I learned the reason why, and then I forgot again. But in tennis, if one side has the score of 0, you would say love instead of 0. So if the score is 3-0, you would say 3 love. Right? Tennis called love. Okay. Telephone numbers. You read them, you just read the numbers, but you should pause every 3 or 4 numbers, just like in Chinese. And usually it's the British who use the word double. Americans don't often use double. Let's take a short break, and then we're going to look at the right-hand side of this handout page. More grammar. Page 72 on the right-hand side. Kings and also people who have the same name as their parents, usually men. So if you see a name with a number after it, you have to add the and then use the ordinal number. So this is not Henry VIII, it is Henry the Eighth. It's not Louis. First of all, it's not Louis, it's French, so it's Louis. It's not Louis XIV, it's Louis the 14th. If usually it's a man, so I'm just going to use a male example. If the father and the son have the same name, the first one is John Smith Sr., right? This is shortened to SR. This is Senior. The second one is John Smith Jr. However, if you have 3 people and counting with the same name, then senior and junior don't make sense. Because if you're saying junior, are you saying number 2 or number 3? If you're saying senior, are you saying number 1 or number 2? So if you have 3 or more people with the same name, then you would add those numbers. John Smith the first, John Smith the second, John Smith the third. That does not make John Smith a king. You're just simply saying all 3 generations of John Smith have the same name. Floors. I'm sure most of you know this. The British count floors in a different way than the Americans. The Americans, if you walk in from the street, that is the first floor. For the British, if you walk in from the street, that is the ground floor. So if you go from the first floor 1 up, that is the second floor. But if you go from the ground floor 1 up, that is the first floor. So if you talk to a British person, remember to always subtract 1 from the number of the floor that you're talking about. Right? So American 5th floor is British 4th floor. Another word for floor is story. So second floor is the same as second story. Sometimes British people will spell it as story. It just means floor. A related word is a landing. You know how when you walk up the stairs, sometimes you have to turn in the middle? Like at Mingchuan, right? If you go up 1 floor, go this way, turn, go that way, right? The middle part is called a landing. Or sorry, any place where the stairs stop is a landing. So some stairs don't stop in the middle. You just walk and you get to the next floor. Then that floor is a landing as well. But we don't usually call that a landing because we can just call it a floor. But if you walk up partway, that's the landing, and you turn and you walk up to the next floor. Okay? I don't know if we have a name for that in Chinese. 中文有这个字吗? Yeah, probably not. But in English, that middle part is a landing because you land there like a plane, right? You land there when you're walking. Okay, that doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't matter either. Well, I guess it does matter. If a word has a plural, only the last word has the plural. Here we're not talking, so like 500 pounds, there are 500 of these pounds. But if you say hundreds of pounds, you're not saying how many hundred, you're just saying many. A related word is a 5-year-old child. So in this case, 5-year-old is 1 word. It is an adjective to describe the child. But if it's not 1 word, then years is plural. Right? This is 3 words. So since there are 5 years, years is plural. But this is 1 word. So the year is not plural. Continuing. Money. Yeah, so the British a few like decades ago reformed their money system. Now they follow the same system as the Americans. You have pennies, and then you have like every 100 pennies is another unit. So like let's see, if you're talking about American currency, this is $5.23. In this case, we use the word and for this dot, $5.23. If you're talking about British pounds, and I don't know how to type the pound symbol, but think of pounds. It's £5 23 pence. Pence is, I guess it's the abstract word for pennies, but I'm not British, so I'm not sure. But they use the word pence. Finally, if you're talking about euros, and again, I don't know how to type the euro sign, but then this would be €5 and 23 cents. We go back to cents again. In daily life, you can omit the and the cents. So you can, instead of saying €4 and 85 cents, you can just say €4.85. Or if everybody knows that you're using euros, like you're in France, nobody is using another kind of currency, you can just say 4.85. Okay, so let's say you have this one. The formal name is $1.50. You can say $1.50. You can say $1.50. You can say $1.50. You can even just say 150. And because of the context, everyone knows you're talking about money. People will know 150 means $1.50. This shorter way of talking about money, you can use this for anything under, let's say, 1,000. But over 1,000, it gets more complicated. You have to say the full amount. So, like, you might, if you have seen an American food commercial before, you might have seen numbers that end in 99, because of course it's a kind of marketing tactic. If 5.99, this is how you can say this: 5.99. It's basically the same as $6, right? But for some reason, your brain feels like 5.99 is not really 6. Logically, you know it's 6, but it doesn't feel like 6. You can compare. Which one feels bigger? 6 feels bigger, even though they are basically the same. And that's why so many prices end with 99. So so if you listen to like a TV commercial, they'll say like a Big Mac meal for only $5.99. That's what they're talking about. I'm not advertising for McDonald's. That was just an example. We talked about this. Sometimes you can use possessive to express a length of time. You can say a 1-week holiday. Nope, not like that. A 1-week holiday. Or you can say 1 week's holiday. Both are the same thing. Yeah, we don't need those. Okay, do you have questions about numbers? No? Okay, I am. Now let's go to the next page. On the left-hand side, math. You do need to know how to say math words. So 2 plus 2, 2 and 2. But the official word for this is addition, right? So where is this? This is addition. This is subtraction. This is multiplication. And I can't type the dot space dot line dot thing. Yes, I can. This is division. You need to know this because it leads to a verb phrase. 2 added to 3 equals 5. Yeah, I should also give you that one. This is equals. So 2 added to 3 equals 5. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 2 and 3 are 5. The verb phrase for subtraction is subtracted from. So you have to reverse this. So 3 subtracted from 5. Right? This is actually 5 minus 3. But if you use the formal phrase, you have to reverse it. Multiplication is multiplied by, and then division is divided by, and you have to reverse that as well. 5 divided by 3. This is this. These are the formal words, but in daily life, we usually don't use these. There are shorter ways to talk about math, and that is on our handout. Plus, the addition sign is and or plus. You can see here, people disagree. Should this be singular or plural? Both are fine. 2 and 2 is 4, 2 and 2 are 4. Minus 4 from 7 or 7 minus 4. Multiplication, times. 3 times 4. Another way is 3 by 4, by. 3 by 4 is 12, right? By. So sometimes you might see people talking about something called a 2 by 4. This is talking about usually a piece of wood that is 2 on one side and 4 on the other side. A piece of wood. And then division, usually we say divided by. But another way to say this, it's less common, but you can say 3 goes into 9 3 times. You don't have to know how to say this, but you have to understand it when somebody else says it. 3 goes into 9 3 times. Dates. Okay, so in Taiwan, we say year, month, day, right? 对吧？台湾是年月日吧？ Americans say month, day, year. Everyone else says day, month, year. Or that's how they write it. But the way that you read it, if you're using American English, you would still use the American way of reading it. So even if it looks like 30 March 1993, you would say March 30 or March the 30th, 1993. When you read it using American English, we follow the American order. March 30, March 30th, March the 30th of March, and the year. The year is cut in half. This is 1993. 1993. This is 1305. This is 1910. If there's only half, you can just say 1200, right? 1900. If it's thousands, we say 2005. You don't have to add the and. 2005. So 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2009, 2010, 2011. That's how you read those numbers. Okay, and then if you have to clarify, is this before year one or after year one? Older forms, you would say BC and AD. BC stands for before Christ, AD stands for the Latin phrase Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord, which means after Christ. But of course, not everyone is a Christian. This is kind of unfair for people who are not Christian. So now we have a new way of saying this. We say 55 BCE or 55 CE. This stands for before common era. And then this, of course, stands for common era. In Chinese, we now call this 公元. You may have seen this in your history textbooks, right? Before we call, like the BC and AD in Chinese, we call this 西元. But now with BCE and CE, we call this 公元. And because CE is also English, like AD is Latin, so you used to have to add the AD in front of the number, which of course nobody remembers to do. But with CE and BCE, you just add them at the back. That's fine. Okay, by the way, a math problem. What year comes after 1 BCE? 公元前一年，下一年是哪一年？ The answer is 1 CE. There is no year 0. Nobody exists in year 0. But this is because, okay, so the year 1900, is this the 19th century or is it the 20th century? The 1900 is the 19th century. So 1 CE is the first century. Okay, think about this. January 1st, 1901 is the beginning of the 20th century, right? Therefore, year 1 is the January 1st, year 1 is the beginning of the first century. That's why we don't have a year 0. Does that make sense? Okay, like I shouldn't be talking about this. This is not an English problem, it's a math problem. But since we're talking about dates. Okay, and then we have some other stuff here. The technical term for this is 4 to the power of 2. Let me write that down. 4 to the power of 2. So you can do this with any number, right? This is 5 to the power of 7. But we don't use 5 to the power of 7 very often. The most common ones we use are to the power of 2 and to the power of 3. So the more common way to say this is 4 squared and 7 cubed. A cube is a 3D square, 立方体. We talked about by. This is 60%. Percent is one word if you are American and two words if you are British. Per means every, right? So percent means every 1 out of 100. 就是百分之多少. But in American English, it is one word, percent. Speed. You might see MPH or KMPH. MPH is miles per hour. KMPH is kilometers per hour. By the way, if you're using the metric system, kilograms, kiloliters, but it's kilometers if you're American. If you're British or from anywhere else in the world, it is kilometers. Only the Americans say kilometers. Right. If you're using the imperial system, which is British and American, weight is calculated in pounds, and that is shortened to lb because it comes from the Latin. I know it doesn't make sense, but pounds is okay, so let's weights. Pound is lb. This includes money as well, right? The British use 1 pound of money. They also shorten it to lb. That's why the pound sign is a big L. Let me just find that for you very quickly. Pound sterling, there we go. So even when you're talking about money, you're using a big L because the abbreviation for pound is lb. Okay, if you're talking about weight, under pounds, the smaller kind of weight is called an ounce. And that is shortened as OZ. Again, I used to know the reason and then I forgot. In Chinese, we call this 盎司, right? And it's shortened as OZ. Temperature. You read this as 28 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. You should know this word, Fahrenheit, 华氏. Celsius, another word for Celsius is centigrade. Celsius is the name of the person who invented the system. Centigrade is more accurate because centi means 100, grade means level. So Celsius or centigrade, both of them happen to begin with C. It could mean either one. So 28 degrees Celsius. How do you convert between Celsius and Fahrenheit? What was it? Times. Wait, no. Like this. Yes, you're right. Sorry. Like that. Okay. So 9/5 is the difference between the intervals, like between 1 degree and the next. Fahrenheit is wider, so you go from 5 to 9. And then 32 is the freezing point, 冰点, for Fahrenheit. The Fahrenheit system was created to better suit human perception, human feelings about hot and cold. So 0 degrees Fahrenheit is not the freezing point. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is what the dude named Fahrenheit thought was the point where it's too cold for humans. 100 degrees Fahrenheit is not the boiling point. 100 degrees Fahrenheit was the degree where Fahrenheit thought it would be too hot for humans. He did not know about global warming. So every summer, like everywhere that is summer now goes above 100 degrees Fahrenheit very regularly. People online, sorry, there's something wrong with my microphone. You might have missed a few words. Okay, yes. Next, height. 1 meter and 89 centimeters. There's an and in the middle, or 189 centimeters. If you're using the imperial system, you might say like 5 feet 6 inches, or you might say 5'6". Same thing. How many inches in a foot? 几个英寸组成一个英尺 Good. 12 inches per foot. 12 inches is 1 foot. And if you need to know this, 3 feet is 1 yard, but you probably don't need to use yard. 1 yard is basically about the same as 1 meter. It's not exactly the same, but it's basically the same if you need to convert very quickly. Right, 12 is a dozen. 13 is a baker's dozen. Because apparently bakers traditionally made 1 more than they needed. 1 out of 10, 1 out of every 10, or every 10th. 1 by 1 in twos, which is 2 by 2. In groups of 3 is 3 by 3. Okay, we're done. Questions? Okay, on the right, you see a lot of blanks. The question is, how do you read these numbers? Tari, the first one. How do you read this?
50%
Close. There, you don't need the and. 56%. 56%. The second one. 曹凯丽有来吗？黄小涵 The second one. How do you read this one? Okay, 2.3 pounds. I mean, you could if you're doing a math problem, but in daily life, we would say 2 pounds 30 pence or 2 pounds and 30 cents. Third one, Ling Pingyan. No. Li Xinyu. Wu Pengyu. 刘振凡 0.258. Yes, you can say 0.258, you can say 0.258, you can say 0.258. All are fine. Good. Next one. Li Ruiying. Yu Xingchen. 彭怡婷 Li Yongqing. Yes, how do you read this phone number? Okay, close. Every 3 or 4 numbers, we should pause. So this is 307, pause, 654, pause, 9880. Okay? 就中间停顿一下 to help the other person understand you. Okay, next one. 何彦奎 黄英佳 Yes, how do you read this math problem? Good. 5 plus 7 equals 12. You can also say 5 and 7 are 12. 5 added to 7 equals 12. All of these are good. Next one. 复元数. If this is a tennis match, the score for a tennis match, how do you say this? If it's basketball, we would say 2-0. If it's tennis, we say 2-love. You don't need to say the hyphen in the middle. So 2-love. Next one. Ray. Is Ray here? Yes. How do you say this number? 7/8. Good. Next one. Wang Ziyun. Wang Ziyun. Wang Lianci. Yes. How do you say this number? Sorry? 1/3? Yes, 1/3. Good. We're going to skip the next one because this is American English and that one is British. This is 50 pence. 五毛 in British. This number, how do you say this number? Saya. Saya here? Yes, how do you say this number? Good. 450,670. Next. How do you say this name, 潘兴贤? 有来吗? 何雨涵. 何雨涵. 在吗? Yes, how do you say this name? Close. James the First. James the First. Okay, next one. Yang Yuxuan. Yang Yuxuan. 蔡依如. 左品红. 曾安琪. 曾安琪没有。郑慧瑜. 杨志允. Tony, how do you say this value? Good. 65 miles per hour. Next. Turning Hui, how do you say this number? 6 squared. Good. Or if you're being very particular, you can say 6 to the power of 2 if you're doing a math problem. Okay, next, how do you say this number? He Bingxuan? No? Wu Shouring? How do you say this number? This year? Good. 1500 AD. Today we would say 1500 CE. Okay, next. How do you say this math problem? V. Is V here? Yes. How do you say this math problem? Good. 18 divided by 6 equals 3. Okay, next. 戴丽，你要不要再试一个? How do you say this score in tennis? Good. 15 love. Next. How do you say this amount of money? Who should I call here? 赖雨辰. Yes. How do you say this amount of money? Close. €1, singular, 85. Okay? Okay. Or you can say €1 and 85 cents. Okay, next. How do you say this number? 郑红人在吗? Yes. Good. 5 cubed. Don't forget the D. 5 cubed. Next, how do you say this number? 图森? No. 吴英娟? No. 张婉琪? Also no. Okay, 林子瑜? 骆思婷? How do you say this number? Two-thirds? 2/3. Good. Okay, next, how do you say this math problem? 蓝正宏在吗? 王博轩? How do you... 是你吗? 王博轩在吗? Yeah, how do you say this math problem? Joe Jenner 等于7 in English. Good. 9 minus 2 equals 7. Or 9 minus 2 is 7. Okay, next, how do you say this number? 曾义轩在吗? Yes, how do you say this number? This one. Good. 2.8906 or 2.8906. Both are fine. Next, how do you say this number? 王宏宇呢? 落跑了. 好. 邱宇恩. 好，刘志凡. How do you say this number? Every comma is a new word. So 289,906. Okay? Okay. 289,906. This one's easy. I'm just going to say it. This one is 100%. This one we also covered years. This is 1603 BC. Okay, this math problem. 许淑日. Good. 4 times 5 equals 20, or 4 by 5 is 20. Both are fine. Next, what is this? Yang Shouan. Yang Shouan 在吗? Yes. How do you say this? 25 what? Okay, so for some strange reason, this is pounds. Bang. This is 25 pounds. Okay, next. Yang Jieyu, how do you say this name? 人在吗? Yang Jieyu? No, not here. Interesting. Zheng Yixuan. Yes, the next one. How do you say the name? Good. Elizabeth II. Next, how do you say this amount of money? Lin Yixuan. Yes. How do you say this amount of money? $5.50 what? $5.50? Okay, yeah, that works. $5.50 works. You can say $5.50. You can say $5.50 if you know that if everybody knows that you're talking about American dollars. Okay, how do you say this number? Hu Tingwei. Hu Tingwei 在吗? Yes, how do you say this number? Close. 8 and a half. 8 and a half. Yeah. This is an important number because there's a famous Italian movie called 8 and a half. Okay, next, how do you say this number? Facundo, could you help us? This one. 0.9 or 0.9. Both are fine. Next, how do you say this number? Daringi, one more time. Okay, close. Remember, in English, every comma is a new word. So this is 567 million, right? The comma is a new word. 120,238. So we start with million, then we go to thousand, then we go to 100. So 567,120,238. This one is 2010. This one is a 2-year-old boy. This one is 25.5%. The second floor in the UK is the third floor in the US. In the UK, it's ground, first, second. In the US, it's first, second, third. 3 dozen eggs is 36 eggs. And finally, this name is George the Fourth. Yeah, it's a Roman numeral error, I know. Not a grammar error. Questions about numbers? Okay, so for homework, please do all the stuff we did not do in class. So we're going from page 65 to 71. 65 to 71. Okay, see you next week.